What's up? This is Uri for Guerrilla Poker, and in this video I'm gonna be talking a bit about the Daniel Negreanu versus Phil Hellmuth heads up for rolls match to the death. The background of the story is after Daniel Negreanu lost his heads up match against Doug Polk, there was some trash talk from Phil Hellmuth, kind of about the value of GTO in a way. Phil Hellmuth was saying the dominant style has been changing and I've found that it's best to stick to my style. And Daniel was like, if you never study and you never improve, you have no chance. So these two guys decided to duke it out where, shockingly enough, Daniel Negreanu is like the poster boy for GTO in this matchup, which is very surprising given his background. But after the Doug Polk match, he's certainly improved at it and knows a lot more about how to play theoretical, technically correct poker. And then you have Phil Hellmuth with his white magic. So I'm sure all of you guys have seen a bunch of how Daniel Negreanu has played against Doug Polk in their challenge. Even though he lost, there was certainly the feeling that he was getting better over time and kind of getting in there, and sizing seemed okay, line seemed okay, more or less just getting better and better as the challenge went on. So in this video, what I'm going to do is talk more about Phil Hellmuth's game and what I expect from him. I think Phil has his motto of white magic in a very read-based style. If we're going to put this into words, what you'd expect is, and how you see Phil playing, is playing very reactive style of poker, where he doesn't really know what he's doing in a way, and I mean this in the best way possible, Phil, but you don't really know what you're doing. You don't have like a clear purpose at the beginning of a hand. Phil loves to say check in the dark, stuff like that. Like he wants to wait and see what the other guy's doing, get a feel for how he's playing and what he's doing, and then decide what he's going to do. This is like his read-based style. And what it leads to is that individual hands, you'll often see Phil Hellmuth play just like a recreational player. He can donk bet, he can limp, he can min raise, he can do all sorts of weird stuff. But what this leads to is that if you're like Daniel and you've studied GTO play, you're gonna get into spots which you don't really know how to handle, because Phil is gonna do stuff that you've never studied, and he's gonna do that all the time. So, in a way, this is like his strength and his weakness. Someone who understands deeply the reasons for what he's doing, what the solver is doing, could do fairly well against Phil. But if you're just memorizing bet sizes and standard lines and then Phil throws some stuff at you, he might actually have more experience and be able to read you better than you can read him. So what Phil is actually trying to do is he's trying to take the GTO players into his rabbit hole and see what comes out and who can predict the response better. I've been a fan of Phil over the years, kept up with a few of his hands. Definitely very emotional guy when he's playing as well. There's a play I like to call the Phil Hellmuth maneuver.
Explosion coming.
He had a heads up tournament where he played against Jungle Man. He was like playing nitty, and then he just got fed up and blasted off with like a random hand on a random board where the two had nothing to do against each other. And I've found a lot of players do this at some point in heads up there. They just get fed up of getting run over and run these crazy bluffs. This works well if your opponent is reacting a lot and suddenly overfolding or underfolding based on how he perceives you. Not so well if he just plays the technical poker. Let's get into a hand that Phil Hellmuth played and talk a bit about what's going on, what does the solver say, what would Daniel Negreanu do to his rabbit hole. Let's get in there. Here, Phil Hellmuth is playing heads up against Jungle Man. Raised pot pre-flop. Jungle Man has 10-5 suited, Phil has Queen-Jack with a backdoor. 6,400 in a pot. Jungle bets 2,200. So 1/3 pot, more or less. Very, very standard line. Phil has Queen-Jack, never folds, so well played. Turn 10. Phil obviously checks. Jungle Man posturing. He's gonna almost always bet trips here. Phil has 3x pot behind. Jungle Man does decide to bet 7,600, so 75% pot. That's a quarter of Phil's stack. And here Phil should just always fold. Maybe you could make a case for calling sometimes. I don't think that would be good. But what Phil does is raise. At this point he's check raised to 19.6. He's leaving himself 9,900 behind. Pot's obviously going to be huge, so there's very little behind. And this is really a spot in which, technically speaking, Phil Hellmuth's play is bullshit. This is not the hand you use to raise. There are just better candidates, right? Like just pick a gut shot or a flush draw or random ace high, something where you're beating something, you have more equity, whatever. The hand's just a fold. Also, it's not a real raise size. Like, effectively, this is a check shove. Now, Jungle Man tanks here. He's confused. And this is where Phil Hellmuth's image pays off. Because at this SPR, you just always stack off trips. No question. There's not enough behind where it really matters. But Jungle tanks and calls. River Flush comes in. Phil moves in for the last 10k. Jungle Man disgustedly snap folds. Phil's play is terrible from any technical standpoint, but he got Jungle Man to fold an unfoldable hand. Snap fold. So if we're talking frequencies and randomizers and GTO, Jungle Man was not playing GTO on the river. He was playing, I'm just folding 100% of my bluff catchers. I don't think you're ever bluffing. You can't have 4-5. You can't have 5-6. Certainly you can't have Queen Jack. And Jungle Man, one of the top heads up and everything, one of the top poker players of all time. And these guys playing heads up, Phil just has him completely off balance in a way. Like, Jungle Man is not understanding the situation as far as Phil's playstyle, and he's adjusting in the opposite direction to the one he should be adjusting. So, is Phil a super genius? Or is he just a fish who got lucky? The results say, there's a method to his madness, and I'm definitely, for one, very curious to see what happens when Daniel Negreanu and Phil Hellmuth lock horns. We'll be covering some of those hands on the channel for sure. Let's do a short solver analysis. We're going to make the spot a bit different, but close enough. Okay, so what I want to talk about theoretically, and I'm going to show you guys this in PO Solver, is why is Jungle Man's play so non-GTO, and in what way did Phil Hellmuth get him off the GTO game plan? Generally, when you face a bet of 10k into 60k, you get really good pot odds. As long as your opponent could be bluffing, you have to call a huge amount of your bluff catchers. There's a formula minimum defense frequency, something all of you guys should know, but you can look it up if you don't. So you need to call a ton of your bluff catchers. Otherwise, Phil can bluff with everything and auto-profit. Jungle Man's folding because he doesn't think Phil has any bluffs, so he's not calling any bluff catchers in a spot where he should be calling almost all of them. A non-GTO perspective would be, I don't think he's bluffing enough here, so I'll just fold. A GTO perspective would be, I always give my opponent, or almost always, credit for finding enough bluffs. I'm just going to defend appropriately and not think too hard about it. And personally, I'm a big fan of Jungle Man's approach. He just picked the wrong spot, but I'm not hating on his fold. So the way a spot like this should work. Ranges are not accurate, but I mean they weren't anyway. So yeah, Queen Jack should check call flop. Turn 10, Jungle Man should bet every trips because they're kind of short. And here you guys can see this is what I was saying. Queen Jack off could call a turn bet, actually. Why could it call? Because PO Solver strategy is not really betting ace highs and king highs too much, so you have showdown value, you have some outs. It's a reasonable call, but certainly not raising. And if you're raising, you want to be having some trips, some like 5, 6s, 7s for protection, 4 or 5 offsuit raising a lot, and a bunch of low flush draws. Feels like Jungle Man thinks this range is way wrong in some way. And then when you raise like this, Jungle Man can shove some, it's fine to still call a bit. And, 9 of diamonds river. Phil doesn't get to bluff everything. Sizes are a bit off in my sim, but certainly Jungle Man folds some bluff catchers, but not trips. Now, why not trips? Because trips interact with a value range. Like, with so little behind, Phil should still be shoving his own trips. Should even be shoving 7s. So folding trips is pretty ridiculous from a theory standpoint, right? Like the flush coming in, sure, you have some flushes, so what? Main check raising range is still trips. 10-5 can chop with 10-5, B10-4 has some removal effects. Bluffs are still in there, right? Like 4-5 or whatever. So I don't know, ace highs, like I was saying, if you're gonna check raise something with ace of diamonds, I don't know. So yeah, Jungle Man, we really butchered the hand. Phil also butchered the hand, but in a tiny way. Like, if you ask Solver What's the EV of check raising queen jack off? It'll be like, you know, it's minus 1/10 of a big blind or whatever. It's not the best combo. It's not the end of the world. Really key thing here is Phil's mixing up his play in weird ways. He gets the other guy off balance and then hopefully, you know, bluffs and they're folding all their bluff catchers in a big pot or something of this type. Definitely a matchup that's going to be very interesting. I, for one, look forward to seeing it. And White Magic versus GTO. I think if you put Phil Hellmuth against Doug Polk, it's tough. You want to say Doug Polk would always win, and certainly over the long term, I imagine he would. But over a small match where Phil's going to be doing all sorts of bullshit, I think Doug Polk's approach would probably win. We'll see how far Daniel Negreanu has made it in the GTO ranks. Like, can you play GTO in the face of this? Are you even trying to play GTO? I know that's not Daniel's style. Or is he going to get in the streets with Phil and play leveling wars with him? Which would make for much more interesting viewing in my eyes. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our website, Guerrilla Poker. It has a course about how to improve your red line. I discuss a lot of these concepts and playstyles, among other things. And we also have GTO pre-flop ranges, which, Phil, I strongly advise that you do study at least a bit. That doesn't mean you have to stop limping. Limping's still cool. Okay, so see you guys next time.